A good Tag. The Rebbe is began the Farbrengen this afternoon that today is Tu B'Shvat. And the Bechlal, the 15th of the month, by Yidden, is very meaningful. And as the expression for the 15th of the month is Kaima Sihara Ba'ashli Musa. Sihara means the Levada, the moon. The moon is standing in its completeness. And on every 15th of the month, we have the moon standing in its completeness. And Bechlal, this is something which has a very strong meaning and relates very strongly to Yidden. Because as Chazal tell us, Yidden are compared l'Levana, Yisrael nimshalu l'Levana, and therefore Yisrael meinen l'Levana. Yidden count. Also the calendar year is a Levana year. So that's why when it comes Tesvav, the completeness of the month, it's a day that's very meaningful and much significance to Yidden. And that is why we have celebrations on the Tesvav, not only in Tu B'Shvat, but we have it, most famous ones, at Tesvav Nisan and Tesvav Tishrei. Also an Indian of Tesvav. The specialty of Shvat, on Tu B'Shvat, when we have the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilonis, there's a special in-depth meaning in Rosh Hashanah Le'ilonis, because the lesson which we can derive from it refers really to every person, because Ki ha'adam eitz hasada, man bechlal is compared to a tree. And here the expression is used, Adam. So on one hand, we're talking about Adam, the one who's really on the level of Adam, the Adam Amiti. Chassidus tells us there are various titles that describe man, that describe a person. And Adam is the highest level. Adam is based on the expression Meloshin Adam ala Elyon. He is compared to the Elyon. So on one hand, we're talking about the one who is the Adam Amiti. But on the other hand, it really affects every Yid. Because as Chazal tell us, Atem Kuyim Adam. All of Klal Yisrael, all Yidden are called Adam. So Mamela, every Yid has a shaykhs to the Indian of Rosh Hashanah Le'ilonis. Every Yid has a shaykhs to the 15th of Shvat. And everyone can derive a lesson, can derive a hayrah from Tu B'Shvat. Here the Rebbe went into explaining that Bechlal, we know that the calendar months correspond to the Shvatim. There are 12 months, which corresponds to the 12 Shvatim. Now it's brought in Sfarim two different ways how the months correspond to the Shvatim. Whether it is Kiseder Tildasan, the way they were born, meaning beginning from Ruvain. The first month, in other words, Nisan has a shaykhs to Ruvain, and Shimon has a shaykhs to Iyar, and so forth. Or another way is brought in Sfarim, the way, the system, the order which the Nesiim were makriv, the Korbanos, at the Chanukas HaMishkan. And then it begins with Yehuda. But regardless, any way which we will approach, so we know what Chazal tell us, based on the pasuk, Ish asher ki b'chosei beirach oisam, that the same bracha which was given to each and every shevet, every bracha has a shaykhs to each and every yid. So Mamela, regardless what shevet one is from, and regardless what month has a shaykhs to the month of Shvat, still it means that all the brachas, because all the brachas which were given to all the Shvatim really have a shaykhs to every yid. And as Chazal tell us, out of love which the Rebishter loves all the Yidden, Kol Shai constantly counts them, he constantly refers to them and counts them. So Mamela has a shaykhs to each and every Yid. The question, however, is what is about a Geir? A Geir who does not have a shevet, he just joined Klal Yisrael. So which month does he have a shaykhs to? The Rebbe says, so it's brought in Sfarim, that is why once in a few years we have a leap year. So the 13th month, that has a shaykhs to Geir. But it's more than that, says the Rebbe. It's really more than that. Because we know that there's the famous correspondence from the Rambam to Rabbeinu Avadia HaGeir. There was a Geir in the times of the Rambam by the name of Rabbeinu Avadia HaGeir. And the Rambam writes to him that all Yidden carry the title that we are Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. A Geir is a Ben of HaKadosh Baruch. So a ger who was Nisgaya accordingly, has a shaykhs directly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this Inyan of Tu B'Shvat has a shaykhs to every Yid. Every Yid eating ger. And when it comes to B'Shvat, what do? We eat fruit. Inyan of fruit, we eat the fruit. The peiros shenishtabcha ben Eretz Yisrael. The peiros that Eretz Yisrael was praised with. So Rebbe teaches this also, that really every Yid has a shaykhs to Eretz Yisrael. Based on the Pasuk, Rebbe quotes a Pasuk from the Rebbe's Kapitel Pei Zayin, Kapitel Pos. And in Kapitel Pei Zayin there's an expression, Uletzion Yeyama, Ish v'Ish Yulad Ba. So really every Yid has a shaykhs to Tzion, because it is considered that as if every Yid was born in Tzion. And more than that, V'hu Yechoineneha Elyon. And here the Rebbe teaches, V'hu Yechoineneha Elyon, that the Rebishter will erect and build up Tzion. Will build up Tzion. And to what, from what level does this come? So the Rebbe teaches here in the Pasuk. Bechal we refer to the Rebishter. V'hu goes on the Rebishter. Yechoineneha Elyon. Elyon again refers to the Rebishter. Elyon, the Rebishter, who is Elyon, he is the one above. So in other words, in Hashem Gufa, there are various levels. So we're talking about the level of Elyon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so the level of Elyon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu forbids all Yidden, that every Yid really has a shaykhus to Tzion. Every Yid really has a shaykhus to Eretz Yisrael. So Mamela, when it comes to Bishvat, and we eat Peiros shenishtabcha ben Eretz Yisrael, the Peiros that Eretz Yisrael is praised with, because really every Yid has a shaykhus to Eretz Yisrael. So that is why the practice is that the minig Yisrael is that on Tu B'Shvat we eat these fruits that shenishtabcha behen, the peiros shenishtabcha behen Eretz Yisrael, that Eretz Yisrael was praised with. Peiros that are listed in the Torah. That Eretz Chita Seira refers to wheat, but Gefen, Teina, and Rimoin, they Shemen, Udvash. Here the Rebbe went back to the Inyan of Shvatim. That Bechlal today, besides for Kohanim and Leviim, there are very exceptions that know which Shevet they are from. There's only Yechidei Skula, Chachmei Yisrael, Neviim, that they know which tribe they are descendants of. But Bechlal, we do not. What's the whole union of Kohanim and Leviim? The ones that do know which Shevet they are from. What's the whole union of a Kohen? The whole union of a Kohen is Avos Yisrael. Kohen is to follow in the footsteps of Aaron HaKohen. Aaron was an Oyev Shalom, V'Roidev Shalom. What is the whole union of Oyev Shalom, V'Roidev Shalom? It's the whole union of Avos Yisrael. Even Leviim are also, what's their whole union? Nesunim, the Pasuk says, Nesunim Heima L'Bnei Yisrael. They are given, dedicated to work for the Yid. In other words, they are doing a service to Yid, which is again an expression of Avos Yisrael. In other words, and the same thing when we're talking about Nevi'im, those that know what Shevet they are from. So it's also those that are great in Torah. So also, what's the whole union of Torah? The whole union of Torah is the Yesod of Kol HaTorah Kula is Avos Yisrael, as Chazal tell us, V'idach Pirushu, and everything else is all a commentary on that. Here we say that what is the Hera which we derive from Tu B'Shvat? The Hera which we derive from Tu B'Shvat is the union of Tzmicha, growth. Tu B'Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanos. What's the Pshat? Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanos. The trees that grow. So the same thing in Aveda. What does it demand from us? That a person has to be a Tzemeach. In other words, to grow, to go higher and higher. Furthermore, says the Rabbi, even the Inyanim of Tesvav Nisan and Tesvav Tishrei, the Heroes over there that also relate to Tzemeach. What's the Pshat? Pshat is that over there also comes Sukkot and it comes Pesach. That also calls for an elevation, that we should go higher, we should grow. So the source of the Tzmicha from Tesvav Nisan and Tesvav Tishrei is all from the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanos, which is on Tu B'Shvat. Because being that this is the Rosh Hashanah, for growth, it gives strength and growth in the entire year. What is that? So Yid will say, already went through the entire Aveda. Already went through the Aveda of Yud Shvat, the Aveda of the Yom HaHilul of the Friedrich Rebbe. Now comes a few days afterwards, 5 days later, we demand from him more than that. He should go yet higher. What do we demand now? Now we demand, comes Rosh Hashanah, Le'ilanos, comes to B'Shvat, we demand that he has to be elevated in the sense of tzmich, in the sense of growing. And the Rebishter gives koiches to fulfill it.
And when the Rebbe demands from us, he gives us the koiches to do what he demands. And when he gives us the koiches, he gives us the strength to be able to fulfill whatever he demands from us. To the extent that we find also in Chazal that a tree, a fruit-bearing tree, is considered a Talmud Chacham. A Talmud Chacham is considered one who is fruit-bearing. So, comes on this day of Tu B'Shvat, we have to accept proper achlotas upon us, and also attach ourselves, bizach miskasha, to a Talmud Chacham. Talmidei Chachamim, they are the real balabatim on the world. Torah is a balabasi bevelt. And it will be fulfilled what the Chazal tell us, that when Mashiach will come, even ilonei srak, in other words, such trees that are not giving any fruit, they will also begin giving fruit. They will also become productive. In other words, in Ruchni is the same. In other words, even those who are not productive until now will become productive. And here the Rebbe brings that there's a Gemara. Gemara raises the question, the Rebbe fulfills himself all of the mitzvahs, which he tells Yidden to do. As Chazal tell us on the pasuk, Magi Devar of Liyankev, Chukav Mishpat of Yisrael, that whatever he wants us to do, he himself does as well. So the Gemara asks the question, somebody wants to ask the Tana, if so, how could the Rebbe things grow on Shabbos? Growing comes from the Koyach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We know we are not allowed to do any field work on Shabbos. So how could the Rebbe himself do it? So the Gemara answers that all malachas of Shabbos imply where there's an inyan of Rishus Harabim and Rishus HaYochid. In other words, it's explained it once in another Sikha, that Haitzah, carrying, the prohibition of carrying on Shabbos, this is kind of like a key factor to all the malachas of Shabbos. Even though the other malachas have nothing to do with Haitzah, and have nothing to do with carrying from one premise into another premise, but nonetheless, this concept of Haitzah, this is a kind of a key factor in the entire union of Shabbos. And being that by the Rebbe there is no union of Rishus HaRabim, everything is Rishus HaYochid. Rishus HaYochid, Yechidei Shaloilam, everything is the Rebbeinu Shaloilams. What's the difference between Rishus HaRabim and Rishus HaYochid? Chassidus tells us at length. Rishus HaYochid reflects a concept of a single rishus. In other words, it's such a premise where only godliness is felt. There is no room for feeling or hearing anything else. What is the Indian of Rishus HaRabim? Rishus HaRabim is the contrary. Ture de Preude, where there's room, mountains of pirud, mountains of separation. In other words, Rishus HaRabim is an area which everyone is admitted there. It's the contrary to Holocaust. In other words, it lets in klippets, lets in everything which is a menaged on Holocaust. Memela, being that by HaKadosh Baruch Hu there's only, by the Rebbe there's only an union of Rishus HaYochid. So therefore, as well, there's no prohibition for him to be involved in field work. So Memela, he could be a tzemeach, things that he is involved in can grow and can be developed, though it is Shabbos. I was getting back, so let it be fulfilled. Let be fulfilled. This is what Chazal tell us, that when Mashiach will come, everyone will be fruit-bearing, even alonei srak sheberetz Yisrael, trees that until now have not been giving any fruit, will now also begin to give fruit. Then the Rebbe continued, that when we're talking about v'hachai yitin eliboy, in other words, we're looking for a hayroah bepoyel, which we can derive from the inyan of Tu B'Shvat. It has to be something which will be spelled out very clearly. Because if we're going to leave it up to people that they should go and search for it, some may do it, and some may not have the time to do it. So it has to be something which will be spelled out very clear. What is the v'hacha yiten eliboy? What is the hero which we derive from the union of Tu B'Shvat? So the Rebbe says that there's a famous sikha from the Frierdiker Rebbe regarding Shabbos Shira, where the Frierdiker Rebbe there brings a custom in behalf of Maral Meprog, that in the times of Maral Meprog, people would go out on Shabbos Shira, they would prepare schwarze kashe. Kashe is what we would call buckwheat, that's kashe. Black kashe, and they would serve it to the oifes, they would serve it to the birds. So the Rebbe says, this is a hayroah which not everybody could fulfill. First of all, regarding feeding animals on Shabbos, there are many halachic restrictions how we have to go about it. Primarily, it has to be such an animal, such a bird, or such that it is the responsibility upon us to feed these birds. Otherwise, we're not allowed to feed them on Shabbos. It has to be mizaynason alecha, to feed them, to take care of their mizonos, to take care of their food, has to be your responsibility. Otherwise, somebody else's birds or pets, we're not allowed to go out and feed on Shabbos. So the Rebbe says to describe it, that we're talking about such an individual who has, as the Rebbe used the expression, his hon, or his hin, own chicken, to go ahead and feed them on Shabbos. It's a very unusual type of a situation. And above that, says the Rebbe, it's interesting, the Frierdiker Rebbe is the one that tells us about it, but at the same time, the Rebbe says he hasn't seen that the Frierdiker Rebbe himself should be involved on Shabbos Shiren, on Tu B'Shvat, to go ahead and see to it, on feeding the Eifa, serving them black kash. Talking about this Inyan, the Rebbe says there's another such an Inyan, which though it's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, and it's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch twice, and that is the Inyan that on Motzei Yom Kippur to go ahead and start building the sukkah. And again, he hasn't seen the Frierdiker Rebbe doing it. The Rebbe says he could have asked him, and if the Rebbe would have given him a look, why is he asking him such a question? Says the Rebbe, so there is the Sichas from the Frierdiker Rebbe, where he himself discusses this Inyan, so I could have told him that it's based on the Sichas, on your Sichas, in other words, where you discuss this Inyan of regarding the halacha which is mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, and not only is it mentioned once, but it is mentioned twice, that on Motzei Yom Kippur we have to build the sukkah, start building the sukkah, and nonetheless I didn't ask him, and he didn't do it. And to say that he did these type of things in a hidden way, in the derech of Hatzna Lechas, there's no reason why to go hide and do these type of things. So the pshat is that it's Take in Yonim and Torah, and when will we fulfill all of these in Yonim properly? When will we do Ki Mitzvahs Ritzonecha, fully fulfill whatever the Rebbeinu wants? That'll be when Mashiach will come. And the truth is, when Mashiach will come, we will also not regret why we didn't do it before then. Just like now, we're also not regretting why we're not doing. What we are regretting is why Mashiach isn't coming. We are begging for Mashiach to come, but we're really not missing out why we're not doing these things, though there is a source for them to do so. Incidentally, the Rebbe brings in the Menhagim which were written by the Rebbe, Menhagim for the month of Tishrei, there the Rebbe brings that when it comes Motzei Yom Kippur, we talk about the sukkah. At least we begin planning about erecting the sukkah. That's what the Rebbe writes there. So Mamela, getting back to our Inyan, question is, what is the Hera B'Poyel, what is the V'Hachayit and Elibe, which we all can derive from Tu B'Shvat? Here the Rebbe brought out several Hera's L'Poyel, which are important from Tu B'Shvat. First of all, the Rebbe says, learning the Teiras, to look up this Sikha, which we just spoke about, this Sikha of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and Bechlal, to be meisif, to grow in Teirah, as we're discussing that the whole union of Tu B'Shvat has a shaykhs to Ilonis. What is an union of an Ilon? An Ilon is Seimeach, an Ilon grows, flourishes. So we have to reflect in Aveda the same union of Tzmicha. A plant that grows. And this is related to Torah. In Torah we have to have this attitude. And also in Stokke, as we just discussed, just like we find the custom of the Maral Metrog, to go out and feed the Eifes, to feed the birds, on Shabbos Shira. So what does this bring out? That brings out the concept of the Rachmov al Kol Maisov, that we have Rachmanis on all the Maisim, just like the Rebishter has Rachmanis on everything that he has pity, on everything that he has created, and cares for everything that he has created. The same we have to do in our Aveda, also an Indian of Tzedakah, that wherever we know there is someone poor, wherever we know there's someone in need of assistance, we have to go out and help them. Whether it's Yidden, or individual Yidden, or Moiser of Yiddishkeit, anything which is in need of tzedakah, which is in need of help, it is our responsibility to respond. The person cannot say that he has already given enough tzedakah, because we know what the Alter Rebbe writes. The Alter Rebbe writes that nowadays there's no concept of a mevazvez al yevazvez yisam mechaimish, that nobody can give more tzedakah more than a fifth. Meiser is a tenth. Chazal say a person can give up to a fifth. But the Alter Rebbe writes that nowadays we can, and the Alter Rebbe explains why also in Geras HaTshuva, that today we can go out and give even more than the fifth. And the Rebbe says that there's a famous incident that took place by the Frierdiker Rebbe, that a person undertook upon himself a large sum of tzedakah. And it was a sum of tzedakah which, when he undertook himself to give this sum of tzedakah, he wasn't close to it at all. And nonetheless, being that he made up with a sincerity, the fullest sincerity that he has taken upon himself, this commitment to give this amount for tzedakah, what happened was the Rebbe helped him, and he was able to fulfill it, and he taka fulfilled it. And the Rebbe says it's a known story, though we're not mentioning names, but the story is known, and there are people that knew this Yid, and it's something which the person taka went through because of the fact that he undertook upon himself to give this large sum of tzedakah. The Rebbe made it possible for him that he was taka able to give it. So getting back to it, Rebbe says the inyan of tzedakah is something of great importance. Rebbe said that now, during the Farbrengen, people should accept upon themselves what they want to give for tzedakah, and the tzedakah could be given tonight, even before Havdalah. Though there's a famous story in Yerushalmi where the Yerushalmi brings out that we do not give tzedakah at night, but the Rebbe once spoke about it on previous occasions, being that we do not give it directly to the poor person, we give it to a gabei tzedakah, so there's nothing wrong in it. And even if we do not have a gabei tzedakah whom to give it to, the mere fact that we are preparing the tzedakah and setting it aside, that we will give it, we will make this contribution as soon as we have the chance to, this in itself is also an inyan. Talking about this inyan, about giving tzedakah at night, there's a famous story the Rebbe once mentioned a few times in Farbrengens. The Rebbe said that many years ago, when the Rebbe lived in Paris, he once came into a shul at night. It was Ma'ariv time. The Rebbe walked over to the pushke, and he threw some money into the pushke. So some individual in the shul came over to him, and he told him, he didn't know who he was, and he told him, "Aren't you aware that you don't give tzedakah at night?" Sure. A while later, when the Rebbe came to Poland, it was by the Frierdiker Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe at that time lived in Poland. So the Rebbe told him the incident that has taken place, that he was in a shul in Paris, that he threw money into the pushke. It was Ma'ariv time, and somebody came over to him and told him, "Don't you know you don't give tzedakah at night?" So the Frierdiker Rebbe smiled. He said, "The person that came over to you with such a comment, probably not only doesn't he give at night, he probably doesn't give during the day either." And another inyan which is negeya, ahira l'poyel, regarding Tu B'Shvat, is the Rebbe urged that we cannot satisfy ourselves that we have eaten the fruit of Tu B'Shvat. In other words, the peiros which we eat on Tu B'Shvat, the peiros that Eretz Yisrael is praised with, as discussed earlier. But we have to make sure that when we later during the day to see to it that the families and the children all participate in the Tu B'Shvat by eating the Tu B'Shvat fruit. And it's extremely appropriate, says the Rebbe, because we're talking about an inyan of Shnas HaYeled, but this year Shnas HaYeled v'Hayalda. It's the year of Chinuch. So therefore, it is an opportune time to alert everyone that everyone should be involved and observe the Chinuch which our children are getting. Be involved in devoting our time for the Chinuch of our children. And not only for the Chinuch of our children, but for our own Chinuch as well. And a person shouldn't say that he's a tzaddik gomel. What's the pshat of tzaddik gomel? A person may think that he's a tzaddik, and together with this gomel, what's meant gomel? He's already finished. In other words, there's no room for him to grow. He's already reached to such a level. He's a complete. He's complete. He's already perfect. So it's on the contrary. A person has to know that we have to keep on going from level to level. This is the whole Horoah from Tu B'Shvat. We have to be at Semeach. We have to grow, just like a tree that grows and constantly gives fruit. So we concluded talking about the Inyan of Shira. Today was Shabbos Shira. So there's a Chazal. Chazal says that there are 10 Shiras in the Torah. The 10th one will be sung when Mashiach will come. As well, we also find regarding the harp which was used in the Beis Hamikdash had a certain amount of strings, but the harp which will be used when Mashiach will come, that harp will consist of 10 strings. Rebbe continued with another Inyan,
Shazman Groma, which is an opportune Inyan, which relates to the Inyan in which we are involved, and that is regarding the custom of learning 3 Prakim Rambam a day. And for those that are learning 3 Prakim Rambam a day, today we are finishing in Rambam the halachas of brochas. So first of all, it's a hashgacha pratis, that the halachas of brochas have a shaychus today, because today is Tu B'Shvat, and on Tu B'Shvat we are involved in making extra brochas for the fruit that we are eating. Particularly that Tu B'Shvat is coming out to be on a Shabbos, and we know that we are supposed to make 100 brochas a day. So during the week, it's much easier than during Shabbos, because during the week we recite 3 Shmona Esres, and each of the Shmona Esres has 19 brachas. However, when it comes Shabbos, we recite Shmona Esres, but the Shmona Esres of Shabbos only have 7 brachas, so we are short in brachas. So that's why Shabbos Shabbos B'chlal we have to make more brachas to reach the number of 100 brachas. So particularly this Shabbos, and this is the Shabbos of Tu B'Shvat, so we're definitely making more brachas because of the fruit which we are eating. B'chlal, there's a minig by Yidden that when we come to an Inyan of Gemara Shel Torah, whenever we complete something in Torah, like an Inyan of Halachas and Rambam, an issue is made of it. So this Farbrengen, not only is it a Farbrengen where we made Kiddush and we ate fruit at this Farbrengen, but it's more than that. This Farbrengen we're also making a siyum on the halachas of brachas and the halachas of the Rambam. Rebbe says he will ask a question, but he will not answer it. He says because it's always easier that way. It's easier to ask a kasha and leave for somebody else to search for the teretz. The Rambam, in the last words of Hilchas Brachas, the Rambam brings a pasuk, B'chol yoim avorcheka, famous pasuk, that on every day I will bench you. Rebbe asks, what shaychus does this have to the closing of the halachas of Rambam? Closing of halachas of brachas in the Rambam. First of all, this is a pasuk which was recited by David HaMelech. David HaMelech is the one that instituted the concept of making 100 brachas a day. And what do we say here? B'chol yoim avorcheka, every day I will say a bracha to you. That's not enough. But more than that, this is not the meaning of B'chol yoim avorcheka. What's the taich of B'chol yoim avorcheka? Pshat in the words of David HaMelech, B'chol yoim avorcheka, is that every day, regardless what kind of situation I will be in, I will always praise you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Completely different meaning. Has no shaychus to the need of making brachas. Furthermore, if we're teaching that way, that means regardless of the situation which one is, whether it's obvious good, chas v'shalom, not, he will always praise and thank the Rebishter. When it comes to an inyan of siyum, when we conclude something, we always like to conclude b'toiv, with something which is obvious good. And where is the obvious good? In this taich of B'chol Yom Avorcheka. In the meaning of B'chol Yom Avorcheka. And here the Rebbe brought out that B'chlal, in the halachas of the Rambam brings out various brachas. The Rambam also discusses the bracha of Bichas Haidor. In other words, what we would call Bichas HaGoimel. And when does one make a bracha of Goimel? So there's a siman, Chayim. V'chol HaChayim Yidu Chasela. All the Chayim, all those that are alive, Yidu Chasela will praise you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in Sfarim it's brought a siman that Chayim is an abbreviation. Choyle, Yam, Yisurim, Midbar. One is Chas v'Shalom a Choyle, one is Chas v'Shalom Mil. or one who travels over a sea, or Chachman somebody who had Yisurim, had pains, and Midbar, one that walked in the desert. And all of these, when they finish and they come out safe, they all have to bench Birchas HaGoyim. So we see how Brachas Bechlal is an inyan that affects the Chayim of the person. In other words, being that this abbreviation is given on the inyan of Brachas, so we see how important Brachas are to a person, that it is reared on the Chayim of the person. Here the Rebbe also brought out that it's brought in Svarim. Why do we say Hoidu on Friday before Mincha, the Hoidu which we say before Pasach Eliyahu? Because in this Hoidu is also discussed about all the 4 categories who have to bench Goimel. And it's brought out in Svarim that during the week, being that we are involved in Uvdin Dechoil, in all the Vachadika things, so in all the Vachadika things, if not in a direct way, but in a Chassidus would use the term, in a dakistika way, in an imitation, in other words, in an indirect way, we are involved in all these inyanim. In other words, we go through all different type of dangers during the week. It may not be begashmius in the sense of choyli, yam, yisurim, midba, but at least inyanim that are very similar and reflect these levels. So Mamela, when it comes the end of the week, and we are entering Shabbos peacefully, it's an appropriate time to say this Hoidut, praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu by saying this kapitel in Tehillim. And that is why it's a custom that when Yontif comes out to be on a Friday, then we do not say it. Because Yontif, we're not involved in the Chayil. The Mincha, the Yontif on a Friday, Yontif should come out on a Friday. How do we begin Mincha? Then we begin with Pasach Eliyahu. We do not say the Hoidut. So again, the Rebbe is going back to his question, why does the Rambam conclude the halachas of Hilchis Brachas with the pasuk of Bechol Yoim Avel Cheko? As the Rebbe has an expression, Tein lechacham v'yech kamoid. Leave it up to the wise and he will become yet wiser. In other words, let's go and search for a teretz. The Rebbe continued, again with the Hayra of Tu B'Shvat. The whole meaning of Tu B'Shvat is peiros, to be productive, to be fruitful. And this Hayra we have to carry with us into the Mitzvah Shabbos, and from Mitzvah Shabbos take it with us during the entire week, and something which has an effect on the entire year. And this is also regarding the Sedre which we have begun to lane this afternoon to Mincha. This afternoon to Mincha, we are entering Parshas Yisro. And here the Rebbe brought out, Rashi tells us, Chazal say, why is he called? Yisro had several names. One of them was Yeser, and the other one is Yisro. He had other names. He had a total of 7 names. Why is he called Yeser? Al Shem Sheyeser Parsha Achas B'Torah. Because he added a Parsha to the Torah. He was the one that came up with the idea and gave Moshe an advice, V'ata Sechse, how Moshe should set up the entire judicial system by Eden. So Mamela, he was Moisif Parsha Achas B'Torah. So that is why he's called Yeser. What is the difference between Yeser and Yisro? Yisro is also the same idea. Yisro is also mitzad the fact that he added a Parsha B'Torah. So why is he called, which is a great thing, no question about it, something which is extremely praiseworthy. So why is he called here in the Torah Yisro? Why don't we call him Yeser? We want it, and Yeser was also one of his names. And the fact that we want to bring out his Maila, his advantage, that he was fortunate to be Moisef Parsha Achas B'Torah. So you're good. So let us refer to him only with the name of Yeser, which also brings out this message that Hoisef Parshachas B'Torah, that he added a Parsha into Torah. So this the Rebbe is bringing out when we're talking about Hoisofis, adding. There are 2 types of Hoisofis. What is Oisvav? There are different categories of letters in Jewish alphabet. Oisvav is a Vav HaMoisef. When do we use a Vav? When we want to add on something. In other words, the Vav is really not bring anything out in itself. The Vav only has a shaykhis. It adds on. And when we're talking about adding on, so the Rebbe says apparently adding on is not always something which is advisable. We're just talking now about making brachas. So somebody say, Hamoitzi lechem min ha'oretz. Though it is true, no question about it. But when he's not eating a piece of bread, then we know it's a bracha levatala, something which is extremely unadmirable. But when we're talking about Hoisofis in a positive way,
There are still various levels of Hisafis. There is a level of Hisafa why Yisro was called Yisro, because Shahisif Parsha Achas B'Torah. He added a Parsha to the Torah, and this is a Hisafa of great significance. However, there are certain times when we add on certain inyanim, but these inyanim that we add on are not of such great significance. It's not, you're not adding another Parsha to the Torah. You're doing something very good, but it's not so special that it's Meisef a Parsha Achas B'Torah. And here the Torah is telling us that you should know that anything that you add on is extremely praiseworthy. To be Meisef is always good. Whether it is a Hisaf in the category of Yeser, Sheyeser Parsha Achas B'Torah. Whether it is a Hisaf in the category of only a Vav, which a Vav in itself does not say anything. A Vav is only added on to another word. Nonetheless, you should know that all these Hisafes are meaningful. The Rebbe didn't mention it in the Farbrengen, but perhaps we can, there's a famous, we'll be permitted to add on, there's a very famous story told in the Sichas of the Friedrich Rebbe, that there was a Chassid, Rab Gavriel Neisechein, that's how they called him. Everybody admired him, everybody looked up to him, everybody liked him. And this Rab Gavriel Neisechein, I don't recall the story with all its details, but it was once put upon Chassidim various sums which they all had to give to the Alter Rebbe. And Rab Gavriel, whose financial situation was not the way it should be, also took upon himself to give a certain amount to the Alter Rebbe, and his wife went and she sold all her jewelry, and then the money that came in in turn of her selling the jewelry, what she did was, before her husband went to the Alter Rebbe, she sat down and she polished every coin that the Alter Rebbe took along, that her husband took along to the Alter Rebbe. The story is told at length. I'm sorry, I don't recall the details. And the way the story goes is that when the Alter Rebbe when Chassid came to the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe opened the package which was brought to him by the Chassid, the Alter Rebbe looked at it and was very surprised, because the whole contribution was in a group of coins which were all extremely, extremely shiny. So the Alter Rebbe was very impressed. The story goes that the Alter Rebbe told him that in the Mishkan there was also the kiyah, the sink which was in the Mishkan, which was also brought by the contribution of women. The Alter Rebbe concluded to him, let the Rebbe help that his mazel, the mazel of that particular chassid, should also begin to shine, just like the coins, the shiny coins which he brought him. And the story goes, which the Friedrich Rebbe continues, that the entire situation by Rab Gavriel did change. But again, what Rab Gavriel's wife did was, it was an inyan of Hisafa. The shine without the coins is garnished. And it was, the contribution would have been there anyways. But nonetheless, she was meisef something. She went out of her way and did something which showed the warmth and the ibegegebenkeit and the sincerity that how they are making this contribution to the Alter Rebbe. And that's why this aroused by the Alter Rebbe also such a surprise, and at the same time the Alter Rebbe rewarded them with a bracha. Again, what the Rebbe is stressing is there are inyanim of a safeh. They're not outstanding in their own way. In other words, you're not adding on a parsha b'Torah. But at the same time you should know, it's only a vav. But at the same time you should know it's also an inyan of a safeh. And that is why the Torah has put Yisro's name here not as Yeser, but as Yisro. And it was here in this Sikha also, the Rebbe was talking, Rebbe referred to a story which is told in the memoirs of the Friedrich Rebbe. B'chlal, we know that in halachas of Shabbos, one can accept Shabbos earlier, even before the time of Shabbos as well. Many people do it, particularly during the summer months. There are people that accept Shabbos earlier, and it's to the extent that all the halachas of Shabbos are really in effect for them. As it's brought in Sfam, the Rebbe says that those that are metayel on Shabbos, those that go for walks on Shabbos, if they would, after davening, and then they would go for the walk, and even though it is still daylight outside, it's still in the need of going for a walk on Shabbos. Here the Rebbe referred to the story which is told in the Friedrich Rebbe's memoirs, that there were a group of people once going on a Shabbos walk, and while they were on the walk, it was notified to them that the Erev in the city which they were in, the Erev was broken, and therefore they're not allowed to carry anymore. So the story goes that it was one of the women who was there instructed everybody what to do regarding the halachas of Shabbos, how they should handle in such a situation. He says what we derive from all of this is the importance of giving proper chinuch not only to banim, not only to sons, but to daughters, to girls as well. And as we see Take from this story that it was an Isha b'Yisrael who gave instructions to everybody how they should act when they were all in the middle of the street and they all had objects on themselves. It was an Indian of carrying on Shabbos, and she told them all how to go about it. The Rebbe also, towards the end of the Farbrengen, spoke about the Siyum HaRambam, which is taking place tomorrow, which everybody should participate in tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Sheraton Center in Manhattan. Buses will be leaving from 7:70 at 12 o'clock. In this Sedre, it's already the Sunday of Pashas Yisrael. The Rebbe says this Siyum HaRambam as well as other Siyum HaRambams which will be taking places in other places, in other cities. Always before the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe always reminds everybody to make a bracha achrona. Today, being that there were fruit served at the Farbrengen, in fact the Rebbe himself also had platters of fruit around him. When the Rebbe came in at the beginning of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe also took a few of the fruit because it's Tu B'Shvat. So the Rebbe said that we should all not forget to make a bracha achrona. The Rebbe reminded us also, and also for those that ate fruit, not to forget to make the proper bracha achrona on the fruit that we have eaten. In other words, if we ate perish and ishtapcha ben Eretz Yisrael, then we have to say ala perish, not only ala michya but ala perish. And if it was other fruit, we have to make a ber nefashis. And the Farbrengen, when the Rebbe reminds on the bracha achrona, he also reminded on the special bracha which has to be made after the fruit that we ate during the Farbrengen.
No Russian? No Russian.
I don't like it.
And the tzedakah, you say to give it to somebody?
Whatever you want. Whatever amount you want.
Some kind of tzedakah tonight. Or to prepare for tonight.
Prepare it at least.
Is there any preparations for next week? Or some kind of seder that's going to happen next week?
Nothing to my knowledge. I know a big crowd is expected.
Is that going down from the Omer?
Sure, in 770.
In 770?
Yes. And a big crowd is expected. People will be coming from all over. Hey, Yasala.
Oh, okay.